so that whether it's mitigation or adaptation, we can move forward. Philanthropy is important. We as governments need to give a compelling and convincing argument. We need to be transparent with the project itself, what is needed. I believe philanthropy and MDBs need to work more closely together, and there's an ongoing debate on how MDBs need to be, redefine their work, and I think there's an element of philanthropy contribution coming in there. Both in terms of work on the ground, but also maybe in projects which are defined as important for governments, given their work with different MDBs, there is a way to scale and increase magnitude. Let me conclude by our work on just financing, very, very important. During Sharm el-Sheikh, with GFANs, with the private sector, with philanthropy, we put together the Sharm el-Sheikh guidebook for just financing, and as you mentioned, there's a chapter on philanthropy. We had Rockefeller with us and other philanthropists, and there we have a whole chapter on capital providers, what are the ticket sizes, what are the risks that are being taken. So we need during this year, as we're still presidents of COP, it didn't end in Sharm, it started in Sharm, to try and roll out the discussion around the different findings here. This was a collaborative effort. So 2 points, the just financing and also country platforms, so that we are addressing both mitigation, adaptation as fast as possible, and the prominent P, we keep on pushing the message. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Rania. Indeed, for Gaia, it's about growing the pie, so we encourage and mobilize more individuals, institutions to come forward to champion climate and nature. It is also not about diverting funds away from social causes and other activities, but it's how we can integrate climate-nature considerations when we are giving. And finally, is around how we can be more effective in this giving to link this mighty P with public-private action so that we can move at speed and scale. I want to now turn to Desmond, who is the CEO of Temasek Trust, and you've just launched the Philanthropic Asia Alliance to look at mobilizing more philanthropic action in Asia, right? It's obviously a very important region because there is growing wealth in Asia, and also that this is also a region where there is a lot of scope for climate action. Can you tell us a little bit more about your plans forward? How do you intend to, mobilize more institutions to step forward and also to deploy, working through the Gaia platform?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Kim Hui, for inviting me to be part of this very distinguished panel. You're correct to point out that there is massive challenge and also massive opportunity in Asia. I think if you look at the size and magnitude of what we're talking about, we know that Asia is home to 60% of the world's population. It accounts for 42% of global wealth. At the same time, of course, it's also responsible and accounts for more than half of global emissions. And I think if you were to look at the Global Climate Risk Index, the estimate is that almost 2/3 of most climate vulnerable countries lie in South Asia and Southeast Asia. So it's a severe concern for everybody in Asia. In fact, the Swiss Re Institute, I saw one of their scenarios which postulated that if we were to look at the collective Asia GDP, the assessment is that this would shrink by 25% over the next 25 years if nothing is done about climate change. So these are huge, complex challenges for us to solve. We know that no one can do this alone. We also know certainly not to the kind of scalable impact that is much needed if we're all to combat climate change, is what Secretary John Kerry said, in a race against time. So what we're looking to do at Temasek Trust is we believe that collaborative philanthropy is crucial to bring together public, private, and the philanthropic sectors to address the more systemic, structural, environmental, and social challenges, which is why we set up what we've called the Philanthropy Asia Alliance last September. This is intended to pool together collective resources and expertise with the view to catalyzing comprehensive solutions to prime Asia as a force for good. It's an action-oriented alliance, and we're now actively reaching out to like-minded partners from across the world, not just in Asia, to try and come together as a coalition for that kind of change that we would like to see in Asia. Like-minded partners who also see the need, also the impact and the opportunity of Asia on planet, people, to also help to foster the kind of regional peace and progress that we'd like to see. And we hope to bring as many of these partners together in the PAA, Philanthropy Asia Alliance, which looks at a few levels of partnership. At one level of partnership, it's in donors coming together to pool their financial resources, both for philanthropy as well for impact investing, and in the kind of innovative financing that we're seeing today around blended structures, as well as in outcomes-based financing or pay-for-success kind of model. We're also looking for partners who would be willing to come together with us to manage programs on the ground in Asia. And certainly we're looking to see how research, knowledge, expertise can come together in this alliance to help us to enable the kind of capabilities and change that we'd like to see. Any kind of partnership in any form of alliance is what we're looking try and forge through the Philanthropy Asia Alliance that Temasek Trust is looking to put together. I welcome all of you to join us this September when we formally launch the PAA at our annual summit in Singapore. And you know, to join us at any level of that kind of partnership. But importantly, I would like to thank the WEF for being a strategic partner to the Philanthropy Asia Alliance. This is important in terms of scaling impact. We think that Gaia is exactly the kind of global platform that allows us, in fact, it fits with our resolve and our purpose, and it allows us to actually drive the kinds of thematics that we're keen to push forward through the PAA. Those thematics are, no surprise, it's in the area of nature and climate as one broad thematic. It's in the area of holistic and inclusive education as another area, and it's in global and public health in a third area. And we already, as I was saying, this is action-oriented, so we've already started calls to action to drive forward in each one of these areas. So we look forward to having as many people partner us as possible. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Desmond. And I know that you've been quite successful because even at the initial launch of this idea, there has been 4 or 5 partners coming from Hong Kong, Indonesia, joining forces to see how we can better mobilize action.
Not enough, unfortunately, but we hope to get a lot more.
That's good.
Better. If I could turn to you now, because you run a business, but you've also been thinking about philanthropy for a period now, right? Strategic philanthropy in the Gulf region, and in fact, you've set up a few centers that's focused on studying the space. I know you've also recently been appointed as the COP28 champion for corporate as well as the philanthropic sectors. Can you tell us how Gaia can help to scale efforts in the Gulf region and beyond, and also your plans, and give us a bit of a preview on what we can expect at COP28?
Sure, thank you. So just a quick disclaimer. Unlike many people in this room, I'm not an expert on philanthropy nor climate change. I'm a good student of both, but I am a staunch believer in the catalytic potential for philanthropy to really move global systems to address all challenges really facing humanity and our habitat. And of course, climate philanthropy is no different. Now, I've often referred to philanthropy in general as being the forgotten child of the capital system. I think we're slowly being reacquainted with that child. But that child is all grown up, and so we've got to stop treating it like a child. And I get frustrated when I hear that philanthropy on the whole, you know, it's nice, it's good, it feels good, but it's not going to move the needle because it's relatively small. First of all, on the quantum, it's not small. As we know, it's well north of $1 trillion a year. Could well be double that or more if you consider all the philanthropy we're not counting or we're not measuring. Which, again, to put it into context, is 5 times global ODA. So it's not small, but leaving the quantum aside, the quality is really where, as Mark was referring to, is really where it matters. And its nature of obviously being more nimble, more patient, more risk tolerant, and more equitable strategic philanthropy is where it's going to drive that multiplier effect in partnership with business and government. So in many respects, I think climate philanthropy can be that glue that binds together business, government, civil society towards better outcomes in furtherance of our climate and nature goals. Now, just something to mention on the emerging markets, because it was mentioned, of course, including by Secretary Kerry. As we know, emerging markets today, the climate philanthropy within emerging markets is relatively low. For various reasons, probably a fair bit less than the 2% global average. But we do know, of course, that these markets are going to bear the brunt of the climate crisis. And so in many respects, the climate challenge will be won or lost within these markets. But I am optimistic that we're seeing great change in these markets. And I think we're at this inflection point now for a number of reasons. First of all, I think much greater institutionalization of philanthropy across emerging markets. That's a very positive trend that is happening. Secondly, I think this generational transfer of wealth, huge, that's taking place not just globally, but within Asia alone, we expect $5 trillion or more to be transferred from one generation to the next. And this is to a generation that's far more attuned to both the risks and the opportunities associated with climate action. And third, I think, is a general awareness, globally, but also in these markets, of the interconnectedness of the climate challenge, really addressing challenges within all our systems: health, food security, national security, of course, social justice, and so on and so forth. So we are at that inflection point. Just a quick note on COP28. Of course, the COP28 presidency is well aware of how challenging this is, but is up to meeting that challenge by really creating these systems of collaboration, this global architecture for all these players to come together and to pool capital, but also ideas and energies to generate and create that multiplier effect. And one of the things that COP28 presidency would like to do is, of course, collaborate very closely with Gaia to build this community, not just within philanthropy, but also linking philanthropic players with other systems of capital, including, I think, very importantly, venture capital, to help to promote better venture philanthropy, to help to drive technology at the R&D level, to help to scale up action. So I think it's an exciting time. Again, commend WEF for all the great work that it's doing, and just deliver that message that COP28 wants to collaborate and cooperate with everyone to co-create these solutions to address these challenges, nature and climate.
Thank you, Beda. We have 10 minutes, and I would like to open the floor for any comments from the audience. Yes, the gentleman. Yeah, you've got your hand. Please introduce yourself, and then so we know who you are.
My name is Hashmin Sakib, and I'm from Pakistan, and I'm representing Global Shakers Communities. So my question is regarding, so we are talking about long-term solutions, but countries like Pakistan is facing climate emergency already. So what quick solutions we can take so that we don't face these kind of situations in next year? So do you have any comment in terms of short-term solutions for developing countries?
Any reactions from the panel? Solutions to prevent situations like...
Adding further, because while we are talking, flood passed 5 months ago, but there's still water over there, the people are still living in camps, people are still living in shelters. So we need to be prepared for another flood in coming years. So we need to come up with solutions, we need to have post-disaster management solutions so that we are better prepared. So I just want to know a quick solution for this.
If I can just say that during COP27, one of the breakthroughs was a loss and damage trust. And we need to expedite the financing that goes into loss and damage, because this is one example where certain areas in Pakistan are lost, and therefore there needs to be an expedited push forward. But again, there were so many pledges made a while back. If countries had done adaptation projects to protect from these climate disasters, we wouldn't be in that situation. So I think we just need to push further and further the message and try and be more fast with all these initiatives in terms of implementation.
I'll just say very quick, I mean, the question proves the point that the resources are wholly inadequate. The speed of deployment is wholly inadequate. And I would say as well that the scale of understanding, or the granularity of understanding of future disasters, is still inadequate. In other words, we have we are more and more precise and sophisticated, if you will, on mitigation and the pathways on carbon and the mapping to outcomes. But actually, from a risk map, from the scale and the likely location of these disasters, we're still at early stages. Now, part of what's being put together is through the GRI and others using the global insurance industry is to get much better about that. That has to be in parallel met with resources from public, multilateral, and philanthropic sectors so that the deployment is there alongside. So part of the reason for the initial silence is there is not the resources there. And it, you know, as I say, the question proves it. And this is part of where we need to map private expertise and scaled up philanthropic dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Diane Binder from France. I'm here as part of the Young Global Leaders delegation. I'm the founder and CEO of Regionopolis, which is an initiative that seeks to support entrepreneurs at the nexus of nature, climate, and urban resilience. So my question is, how can big philanthropy help us deploy impact at scale? Because we all share the urgency to act. We don't want to hear yet other commitments of big money being deployed on climate action and nature preservation. But most of the efforts is actually borne by entrepreneurs. So we are actually, with Regionopolis, creating an alliance of implementers so that we can have bigger money from philanthropists to help us deploy at scale. But my question is, like, how can you help us? How can you help entrepreneurs have an impact? Thank you.
So one of the things, if I can just share, one of the things that we've done through our foundation is actually to give a prize, a Livability Challenge Prize, for any kind of idea that helps us with mitigating climate change and improving our resilience. So as an example, we've given $1 million a couple of years ago to a team from Los Angeles, actually, that came with a really interesting idea of how to do carbon sequestration and to turn this capture into actual construction material that can be used. And you know, with the $1 million prize, that's only one part of the spectrum. There are a whole lot of other respondents who came in to that livability problem statement and challenge. And those ideas, not just this particular winning idea, those ideas were picked up by venture capitalists who are interested in scaling this. And so this speaks to this point about having to bring or wanting to bring private capital into all of this space, because if you can bring in the private sector, venture capitalists, to come and seed into all of these areas, there will be a lot more energy and momentum spawning all kinds of new ideas and innovations in the space of acting against climate change.
And Mark?
Just very quickly, hugely important, but also proven approaches at scale, which I think is part of your, and I would suggest one immediate thing is to connect you with the C40 initiative, the Large Cities Initiative. There's important philanthropic capital behind it. I will offend people if I don't name all of them, so I won't start on the list. But this is part of the point, which I think Gaia can help with, which is to pool and amplify like-minded initiatives in order to have the impact that you're looking for.
No, just to say that this is an opportunity that the COP28 presidency wants to and will capture.
Yeah.
Because, and as I mentioned, linking VCs, in fact, in the last few weeks, I've been chatting to and have soft commitments from 16 venture capital bodies or communities around the world, including in India and sub-Saharan Africa and indeed from Asia, to commit to deploying a certain percentage of their venture capital funding towards through investment capital solutions and entrepreneurs who are really leading the charge in developing solutions to climate and nature challenges, but also to put a certain percentage aside in venture philanthropy to really seed not just entrepreneurs but also scientists, to go and find them in the labs, that the work that they're doing within the labs, and help to scale those up. So again, would love to chat to you if you have ideas on how to scale this.
Thank you. We are running out of time. I'm sorry about that, but I'd like to invite Neely Gilbert, who is our young global leader. She's also the chair of, of the investment committee for the Rockefeller Fund, to give us your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here and for the launch of this important initiative. When we first came together at Davos in May and we started to talk about the vision for Gaia, one of the things that I shared was David Rockefeller's vision for strategic philanthropy, which he bequeathed to the David Rockefeller Fund when he formed it. Two things. Philanthropic capital should take risks. This is essential risk capital for seeding the vision for the future of the world that we want and need. The second thing is that we have a moral responsibility to use philanthropic capital to find leverage in driving changes and outcomes for the way forward. And Gaia reminds us of both of those critical principles. As we begin the annual meeting with the theme of collaboration in a fragmented world, the concept of how different forms of capital can come together to drive greater outcomes, whether it's public, private, philanthropic capital, is so important as a vision for how we can move forward on our critical goals in a time of challenge. So as we continue to expand on this concept, think about specific opportunities for how Gaia can move forward in driving strategic, systemic change that we need. As we've heard from many panelists, making a difference on climate touches all of our interconnected global goals. Please, I ask each of you to think about how yourselves as leaders, the organizations which you can touch, and others with whom you can speak and bring to the table as part of this critical work can join us in making a difference on climate and the future of society. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.